not a sexy business, but it is so important. And I am not surprised. I think if we brought in celebrities or some type of cool development deal or project, right, more people come. But people don't understand that property asset management is really the cornerstone of understanding and managing and handling commercial real estate. I always say good brokers are also good managers, so they understand the underwriting. Granted, many brokers like to put pro forma, and I would hate to say, Scott, make up numbers. But as you start getting into this business, not just as just being a broker or in residential, it is good to understand kind of the finer details of asset management. What is that? What is property management? What type of property management can you do? The different varieties, the different numbers, the different metrics, associations, the pros and cons. But I'll just tell you this, all good brokers has a property management group they work with, because the best thing is the property managers usually know when the properties are going to be coming up for sale, for lease, and many other good things. And that's why you do need to get to know part of your team, a great property management. So I would like to start by, Scott, having you introduce yourself, your background, your extensive background, not just in asset management, but property management, and also all the different product types of property management. So if you don't mind, Scott, sharing your background, and then we can go into the presentation of letting people know. And we had some fun discussions, as we see in the news all the time. HOAs, that is in property management. So we'll kind of go the pros and cons and how to make our agents a lot better, whether commercial or definitely residential, that especially loves to sit on HOA boards. But Scott, take it away, introduce yourself, and then we'll get the presentation started.
All right. Hey, thanks. Thanks, Jim. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. So, quickly on my background, graduated out of San Diego State, went right into property management at a local property management company. I started managing homes and condos. Actually, I started out leasing, driving around all over the county, doing leasing and helping with the turnover repairs. And back then we had basic pictures. We didn't have anything like we do now. I've been doing it about 28 years. So started out doing homes and condos, and then moved into larger apartment communities. And then eventually, as I switched positions and a couple companies, I got into commercial. And then I started managing shopping centers, retail centers, office buildings, industrial, mixed use properties, manage land, believe it or not, because some of it's got to have clearing at certain times. You've got to have brush clearance, or if it has forest on it, you've got to have maintenance on that. All of that's management. So did that for a long time through my career. Earned my CPM, my Certified Property Manager designation through the Institute of Real Estate Management. Very proud of that. And so achieved that, and then later started my own property management company and operated that and grew that and managed all the different product types that I just mentioned. And then later incorporated commercial brokerage into it, and I purchased a franchise in San Diego, a national franchise operating out of San Diego, and added that component to my property management company, which I've got to say was really fantastic. If any of you own a management company and you want to add some revenue, and a really great way to add to what you have as a management company, I would recommend adding some commercial brokerage to that. Or residential brokerage. Both of them work well. I did both. And so that's an aside, but if you're ever interested and you own a management company and you're interested in that, definitely let me know. I can help you out with that. And then the other component is I had a maintenance crew of 5 people. And so that's another revenue generator. And we also did HOAs. I should mention that since you brought it up, Jim. But also the construction maintenance division. So had all of those components as I added on to my property management, and they all worked together perfectly. They all became revenue centers, and so that's kind of my background.
Scott, and that's great that you mentioned IREM and CPM, because globally, when I visited Asia, a lot of CPMs, especially in Japan and many others, were very powerful. Mostly they weren't so much property management, but they were asset management. So they did manage and handle, because of that and the network, large of real estate portfolios. So a lot of times brokers, you should go to the Institute of Real Estate Management or other property management events, because it just helps you connect instead of going to a meeting where they're just a bunch of brokers. Many times, like myself, I bought property management firms. I bought 3 of them after I scaled my first. And it was really, as many people start syndicating, managing your own properties. And then you realize, boy, this is a pain unless you do it well to set up your own. But once you get it, it is buying a book of business in the product type, in the location, and you just start scaling and growing it. So it is exciting. So Scott, let's start sharing a presentation on the property management, asset management, just all the nuances and differences. And then we can get into some Q&A, because I know this has come up so often, but I think now, as the market is going to have been distressed, but possibly turning, a lot of asset management receivers, which are asset managers, will be handling these large portfolios when there may be real estate owned by the bank and other financial institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did receivership work too. For management companies, it's great. And when you have the combination of management and brokerage, a lot of times you can pick up the broker opinion of values, and then you manage the asset. And then if you're lucky, the bank or the lender or whoever has that asset will let you broker it and dispose of it for them.
Okay, Scott, presentation's yours.
Yeah, next one. Yeah, I think Alejandra's gonna. There we go. So some of the obviously the key parts of property management, why owners hire management companies, and one of the most important aspects is reducing the liability and managing the assets appropriately. We just listed some of the areas that management companies work with that reduce the liabilities for owners, also make their own life easier. For instance, thorough screening of the tenants. Obviously, you've got to screen the people that are going in. There are different laws. I'll say there are different laws, and you've got to be careful how you are, this is a national group, how you are conducting your screening criteria, because there are different laws in different places and things you can consider and things you can't. So always check your area as to the right way to do that. Normally you're running the credit checks, the criminal checks, the background checks. You are verifying their current residency, their past residency, and then also you're verifying their income. Income can be a lot of different things. We have had people qualify on different types of assistance and aid, and that's income. And so, it is not all just a W-2 job. So, the overall is the screening process and doing it the correct way, the fair way, the legal way. And that's going to make everyone's life easier. The thing on the ownership side is the better you screen, the better residents you have, and theoretically the longer they stay, as long as you're taking care of them and addressing their maintenance needs. And so when it all comes down to ROI, right? And so if tenants are happy and they stay longer, and this is commercial and residential, then you're going to reduce your vacancy, your turnover costs, your advertising, lease up fees. All of those things will lead to a higher bottom line just through proper screening on the way in. Regular property maintenance, of course. You want to do all of your preventative maintenance. You have everything, whether you manage homes, whether you manage apartment buildings or retail, office, etc. You've always got to have your maintenance schedule, your recurring schedule, how you handle your maintenance calls. What is your time of correcting it? These days, you want to get before and after pictures if you can of what's happening. Those go into the different software, whatever software you're using. That's all saved in that unit file or that property file so that you can reference it later. But regular maintenance, both preventive and as it comes up, is huge. One, you want to keep the cost down for the property, which again goes to the bottom line. And then you also want to make sure that your residents and tenants are happy. The next one, please. Response time, of course. When you talk about the difference between property management and asset management, you've got your in communities, California 16 units and over. When you've got communities and you have asset managers, or I'm sorry, resident managers on site, it's their job to handle the calls and the inquiries that come in through the system, and the property manager, regional manager, and then asset manager, maybe quarterly, regional managers within the company, probably monthly, will go through the maintenance list, and they'll see the types of requests that have come in, when it was submitted, how it was handled, how long did it take, things like that. And so timeliness of repairs, obviously for the resident, is crucial. Making sure the quality is there, that it's addressed as fast as possible. Some things take time, but as fast as possible, and that's going to make them happier. They're going to stay longer and reduce all of those expenses and vacancy loss on income, and add to your bottom line. And so, from the regional manager side, that's checked all the time, and then on the asset management side, on a higher level, if you're managing portfolios for clients or syndicators, things like that, they're going to look at it maybe quarterly just to make sure everybody's happy. And they'll also go back and take a look at it. If for some reason vacancies are going to go up, they're going to try to see what's happening. Emergency procedures, you've got to have a plan, especially office buildings, large apartment communities. And you've got to have, obviously your signage, your elevators, all of your staircases, your lighting, all of those things have to be always in place, and always have a plan, and your tenants and residents know what that plan is. Insurance management. Of course, you got to have adequate insurance. You want that, you don't just renew the same policy year after year. Sometimes you add things to a property that needs additional coverage. Sometimes things need to be updated. Sometimes additionally insureds need to be added or dropped. On the commercial side, well, residential side as well now, you want to make sure that the lease renewals are always being followed up on. Software nowadays all has the insurance renewal in place, so that you get a pop-up 60 days before, 30 days before, that the resident tenant's insurance is going to expire. And so you need to follow up on that, make sure that gets in on time and there's no lapse. That's all, it's all mandated in the lease. And so you just need to, management companies need to make sure that's happening. That's part of their responsibility. So anyway, so that's insurance. And obviously, the risk assessment and all that. I mean, we all know why we have insurance. I would say making sure it covers what it needs to, and the limits and amounts are always there. I've actually seen where a property will add another, say, a 4 or 8 unit building. They don't adjust their insurance, but they built out the building, but they didn't adjust the insurance. So things like that do come up that management companies and obviously asset managers have to be aware of. Next one, please. Communication is huge these days. It's so streamlined that it should be pretty easy for the property manager, on the ground resident manager, as well as the regional managers, and then the asset managers sometimes will look into different call situations, making sure that communication is happening and they're being responded to timely. It's not just for the tenants, but it's also that the management companies are communicating with the clients or the asset managers or their CPAs. So, it's all communication, but when you talk about tenant education, or tenant communication, it's going to be so important, because they need to know, obviously, that you're taking care of them, you're listening to them, you're addressing their concerns, whether it be maintenance, whether it be a neighbor, something in the community, or if it's a commercial property, something on the grounds that's being, on a retail center, it could be something like a a lights out in the parking lot. It's creating, a dark area. Well, that needs to be taken care of, but not just take care of it, but communicate to the tenant, thank them for letting you know. And then verify with them after it's been repaired that it is, and usually they're very happy about it. And it's a good conversation to have. So that communication can be such a benefit and such a positive, that if it's handled correctly, it goes again to happy residents, happy tenants stay, reduce the expenses, and a better bottom line and a better value, which goes, when we're talking with agents, both residential and commercial, these are the things that are so important. I brokered small multifamily properties. I like the 5 to 20 unit range. So, when I would do the brokerage, of course, I had the management company as well, but I was in there making sure that the residents were happy, before we listed. What did the property look like? What did the budgets look like? Rent increases, and you work, just completely side by side with those property managers, because you can get that property in the shape and the condition it needs to be in for the client for when it's time to sell. So Jim's right when he says that, I was a much better broker because I did property management prior to doing brokerage. And it was so much better. Also, like James said, my pro formas were more accurate, because the property manager's pro forma is generally going to be sometimes a little bit more close to reality. Nothing against brokers. Sometimes the numbers get a little bit favored. And so, my numbers were always pretty tight, and you can tell, when a broker is working with the management company, because those numbers come out exactly where they're at when you're in due diligence. Those don't fall out, because the numbers are solid. You can back every one of them up. And so that's always a positive. So as far as agents and brokers working with management companies, besides being a fantastic source of referrals back and forth, and so you do want to have them as part of your team. They can really help you when it comes to selling that property. We've all had situations where the management company shows up and they don't have all the keys, and now you've noticed all the tenants, and you can't get into all the units, and now you've got the client there, the representative. And so having that good relationship with a solid management company when you're doing your due diligence or you're preparing to sell it even a year out, is going to be something that is going to be important. Back to tenant education, part of the communication just being letting them, educating them on the house rules, what should be done, shouldn't be done, things like what to throw away, when to throw away things. Some communities have rules on when they have hauling days, and so that's when large items can be placed out there. Other times they can't. Pets are a big one. You've got pet areas, you've got non-pet areas, things like that. So educating the residents really helps them, and it helps the management side as well, and makes smooth, and again keeps them there longer because they're happy. Compliance with laws and regulations. That's a major part of what property management companies should do. That's what they're tasked with. That's why owners, one of the reasons owners will hire them is because they want to make sure their property is in compliance. Owners want to do the right things. They don't want any problems. They want to, sometimes there's compliance, different compliance, whether it be associations. There's a lot of, things you've got to do there. Sometimes there's different laws in different areas on cleaning of things. You've got clean outs of some environmental areas, things like that have to be taken care of. Obviously, management companies have to comply to all the laws, fair housing. Those are all basic these days, just doing the right thing and adhering to the laws in place. So that's one of the major tasks of property management companies, regional companies, not asset managers as much. That's what they hire out for. They're going to want to make sure those boots on the ground companies are doing that. And the management companies want to make sure and should be educating and training their on-site employees to make sure that they're following those as well. And that goes to the train all the staff. Next, please. Professional relationships. Okay, so this is no different than any broker an agent would have. Is with any of the people that you work with on your team. Property managers have to, of course, have reliable vendors and suppliers. That's the lifeblood of it. If you don't have that, you're going to have a lot of problems as a management company. The owners are going to suffer. Eventually, the owners will switch management companies, and they don't want to have to do that. It's a lot of work starting all over. And by the time that happens, you've got a lot of resident turnover that could have been prevented. So, working with trusted contractors, just all of the suppliers and people you work with. I mean, even utility companies that come in to hook up, cable and internet, things like that. I mean, it's not just the landscapers or the appliance repair. You start talking about things like when roofs have to be done. Well, that's a major inconvenience, whether it's residential or commercial, for the tenants. Because you got the banging, you've got scaffolding up, you've got, workers talking, you've got on the commercial side, you may have restaurants you've got to work around. So having those relationships, again, goes back to communication, educating the tenants and residents, but also working with quality suppliers that understand that and are respectful, clean up after themselves. Conversely, the management companies need to pay them on time. They deserve the respect of being paid on time and treated fairly, and so it goes both ways. Both parties need each other, and for the brokers and agents, you want to make sure, obviously, when you're doing your due diligence or pre-due diligence, before you list it, that you've got all of those in hand, and who's doing what, working with the management company on those suppliers that they use. The management companies need to always make sure their insurance is in place, not just liability, but workers' comp. Any other special licenses they may need, qualifications. You've got to have certain licenses to do certain plumbing tasks. You can't just do it if you're a maintenance company and you have to have a contractor's license, for instance. So yeah, obviously, reduce the liabilities for the property owners. That's always the job, is keep expenses down, income up, happy residents, and that's what the asset managers and the owners expect. That's why the boots on the ground companies are hired. Okay, next, please. The different organizations. So yeah, so on the property management, asset management side, like all of us deal with different organizations, these are just some of the different organizations that property managers, asset managers interact with. And I won't read every one of them. Obviously NAA is huge. And I've been a big supporter of and a member of number 2, Instate Real Estate Management's, where I got my certified property manager designation. But they're all great. They all provide training, some of them in different areas than others. Join the committees, join the groups. You can't join them all. I know that gets to be a bit much, but join the ones that make sense for you, if you can, and attend some of the meetings and learn, because like James said, being a better, knowing more about property management, how it functions, and how you can work with property managers to grow your business, it will only aid you in what you do. So those are some of the different organizations. There's others, certainly globally, there's others. If you work in different countries, they're going to have their own, I'm sure. But those are just some of the ones that we listed that property and asset managers interact with. Next, please. Just more of them. So as you can see, this is just a list of a lot of them that we went through. Yeah, just different ones. Some of them are specialized, some of them aren't. But if you find what sector you're in and then join that organization and learn some property management, even if you're just selling homes, but certainly if you're selling larger assets, understanding property management and what they do and how they do it is only going to be better for you, and it's going to make you more educated when you sit down and talk to the client as well. I can talk about property management, all day long, as well as brokerage when I sit down with the client, and then if they're, sometimes they'll say, well, I don't have the money today for this, but I need to do this. This is my cash flow on the property. I can sit down with the budget and the property management company, and we can work out a plan for impounding and saving up for those CapEx expenses that are going to need to be coming up for the sale. Even if it's a year, it could be 3 years out, but that's okay. You're working on a plan to achieve that owner's goals, and that's how we all make money. Next, please. Okay, so some of the differences, and I've talked a little bit about it, but you've got your on-site manager, and I believe at one point California was the only state, I may be wrong now, that required on-site managers by law. California, 16 units or more, and then they do all of the on-site tasks, all the day-to-day tasks. They live on site. A lot of times the maintenance staff, at least one, will live on site. The software nowadays, it used to be that we had everything on site in the rental office. Now everything, of course, is through the software, through the internet. Rents paid online, maintenance requests are submitted online. Sometimes residents will walk into the office and talk to the staff directly. Many times it's now communicated through the online portals. But the resident manager is the one that deals with the day-to-day on-site, walks with the landscapers, walks the units, shows the units, all of that. And then the regional manager works on, again, as it says, a region. So it might be you work in a section of, for me, it would be a section of San Diego or all of San Diego County or all of Southern California. Could be a state, could be the Western region, depending on how that's set up and the person's role. They oversee usually multiple sites. So they'll oversee, could be thousands of units on, 10 properties or something like that. Depending on what the property type is. I managed mixed use portfolios. So I had a mix of residential and commercial. And then I had resident managers on some of those, some of them we didn't, especially obviously if it's commercial, retail, things like that. And they oversee the portfolio and they work directly with the resident manager, and they usually report to a president of property management or a VP of property management within the company. Or they may work with the asset manager. And so the asset manager may work in the same company, they just have a different role. They're overseeing a client or a syndicator or somebody that has a group of properties, and they roll up all of the information. So they're going to take the information, say the monthly reports from the property manager, they're going to combine all of those into the entity, whatever it would be, the syndicator, a single client, but they own many assets, nationally, internationally, and they're going to basically roll it up and say, here's what your entire portfolio is doing. And so that's what an asset manager will do. And they will deal with the larger issues. They will, when the regional manager prepares the annual budget, that will get submitted to the asset manager, who will look at that budget, work with the regional manager, and then work with the client's goals. They may know, for instance, that the property is going to sell in 2 years. So they're going to want to adjust that regional manager's budget based on some of the things they know that the regional manager may not know. I will say the property management companies oftentimes know when a property is going to sell way in advance of when a broker or an agent may know, just because an owner may say, hey, I'm going to sell this in a year. My loan's coming up in 18 months. I don't think I'm going to get a new loan. I'll just go ahead and sell the property or exchange it. And so that management company may know way in advance that asset is going to move. And so another reason to have a good relationship with the property management company. So that's what an asset manager will do. If we were to have another layer here over the regional manager, is they're going to oversee that entire portfolio or grouping of properties. Lenders will have asset managers, and they hire out boots on the ground property managers. And so they're overseeing entire portfolios. Okay, next, please. Property management, asset management, just what we talked about. Property management, day to day. Asset management, they're going to get the reports monthly. They may communicate with the property management company when something comes up, or they may talk to them, have a standing meeting quarterly. Asset managers usually will have standing calls with their clients, whoever they're working for. That may be quarterly. Usually asset managers will send quarterly reports. They won't send them every single month. Sometimes if that's what the client wants, they will. But otherwise, they'll get the monthly reports from the property management company, and then quarterly they'll do a report that goes to their client. Again, it could be monthly. A lot of times it's quarterly, and then they'll have standing meetings with some of the different people, like the lenders and things on a higher level that the property managers won't necessarily get involved with. Okay, next. And that's it. So that's the slide.
Scott, thanks so much. And reach out to Scott if you're looking at property management, asset management, how to connect, and especially when the market is turning, right, Scott? I remember last cycle, unfortunately, when it turned similar to this one's a little longer. A lot of people, right, that were in multifamily residential sales, they wanted to be RPAs, right? Residential property management, right? So they can work in the 16 units to save some of their expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's great experience. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, you may get a knock on your door at 2 a.m. because somebody's unit's flooding, and you're just gonna have to get up and deal with it. Or somebody's dog's barking, and the neighbor doesn't like it. So those are the downsides. But I tell you, it's sometimes it can be a pretty nice gig. I mean, you've got a unit, and the better resident managers move into the better communities, like anything. And so you can live in a really nice community. You can have input with your regional manager on how that property should look. You get rent, credit, a portion of that. You get a salary depending on how big it is, and you get to learn a ton. I mean, I had agents that were on site. They were on-site managers, also agents, like you're saying, James, and their vendor list was perfect. I mean, they knew every carpet person, they knew every appliance person. I mean, when they sat down to talk to a client about selling their property, it was just a no-brainer. It was super easy. So as a career, it is a good place to go for sure. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's why I was saying if residential, I know NAR, when they kind of started it and then they dropped it off, I think the certified property managed CPM, which, maybe there was a trademark violation, but I remember when NAR did this to help residential, because they were managing sometimes their residential portfolios for clients until they want to sell, right? You buy a property, you live in it, you don't want to sell it, you rent it out. So, like what you said, there's large pools of how to do residential portfolio, residential management, but it's still running a business. And people really have to understand, but there's sometimes you run 1, 2, 3, 5, and it's not so much you can control. So you do need the right technology, the right team, the right experts. Like you said, no one wants to do carpet. I think carpet is the largest liability besides roofing. Everyone hates to do roofing and carpets, right? You outsource carpet.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is such a better world since most of the carpets have gone away. Maybe bedrooms, but otherwise, we've got all the fake, wood flooring and planks and those things. So it is a better world, because I tell you, back in the day, when you had carpet throughout, and then people would have cats, and that's as far as I'll go with it. But those were some tough days. Agents know. I mean, you walk into a house, you're like, oh, you own a cat, right? Like there's a cat. so yeah. I mean, it is a good way to go. And from an investment side, I mean, on the brokerage side, of course, it's amazing having property management experience. But for those of us that also own residential property, there's just nothing better. I mean, I can look at a piece of property and I can look at it from a broker. I can look at it from a property manager perspective, a syndicator. And so, all of these things build into what I think should be the ultimate goal, which is owning your own investment property. Too many brokers, and even property managers don't own rental property. And I think that's such a mistake. That should be, to me, the ultimate goal.
And Scott, that's the skill set, right? Just being in the business. We always say brokers, they broker deals, they sell deals, but they never buy deals. And that's how you build your passive income and security. And the great thing is, as you diversify your business, I mean, that's the one thing. I started in commercial brokerage. I syndicated so many deals that I needed to have my own property management, to a point where we started growing. The clients started saying, can you manage my property? And then when people knew in the local markets, when it came about, they wanted to sell. And I got some great deals from clients, and you know what I mean? The kids don't want to run it. They're lawyers, doctors. They're like, I don't want to run grandma's or dad's property management. I'll buy it. And they were doing some seller carrybacks, buying it only at 1 to less than 2 times. I mean, that was just, I need to get rid of it and everything. And a lot of times they finance it. So, I mean, in property management, asset management, receivership, which that we may start seeing that again on some commercial. We saw that in residential, massive residential receivership. So Scott, I mean, a lot of it, this is so important to learn how to plug in. People should reach out to you, ask, how do you work with property management? How do you work on referrals? How do you help each other enhance your business, right? Working as a team. This is why I started. This is why I went to most of those trade groups, BOMA, NARPA, CAI. We talked about, especially for residentials, being part of the board. And they always wanted to find out what properties were being sold, what's going on with the condo communities. And you got to educate yourself, learn, but plug in. And once you build that network, it is really powerful. So Alejandro, you can drop that, and hopefully now we can answer some questions for anyone in the audience. If you have any questions for Scott, myself, on property management, asset management, receivership, how to get started, what you can do, how do you partner up, and maybe get that list of who you could reach out in your local area. Any questions for Scott?
Hey, Scott, I got a question.
Ernest?
Ernesto?
Yes, sir. Scott, I know property management vary the percentage. I mean, here we're in Canada and Europe, there's almost none unless it's condo management or Airbnb management, because you can't find apartment buildings for sale here. So it's not something that's normal. But anyways, on the asset management side, is there an average fee structure that you're aware of?
For an asset manager that's going to manage like an entire portfolio over boots on the ground, yeah, usually they'll take anywhere from usually 1 to 2% of the gross income. Property management companies, depending on the asset size, might be anywhere from 4 to 6% on a bigger asset. Smaller stuff like homes are usually going to be 8 to 10%, depending on the area. But a shopping center that's a neighborhood shopping center probably going to come in around 5.5%, 5%, 6%, depending on the area. And then if there's an asset manager that manages, say, over 15 of those for a client that's got them across the United States or in an area, then they're usually going to take 1 or 2% of the gross income, because they're not going to take as much. They're not doing as much, right? Their liability is a lot less, and they're doing more roll-ups. But they may also have a separate agreement. So the nice thing is, for an asset manager, saying managing 10 assets, overseeing 10 assets, they're going to get that 1 to 2% on every one of those assets. And they're really going to be taking in those 10 reports. But, the management company most likely is going to be using the same software. So it's pretty easy to read. Now you can combine those into asset management softwares. Most of the big management company software will roll those up into their own asset management. So now you take those reports, you get them electronically, they can roll them up into a portfolio summary for a client. And, I mean, I don't want to say it's not easy, but it's not hard. Once you know what you're doing, asset managers are going to have a much higher, well, that's not true. I shouldn't say a higher level of skill to a regional manager. It's going to be different. They're going to be more financial based. Property managers are going to be really concentrating on that asset on a local level, whereas an asset manager is going to be looking at it more, portfolio wise. A lot of times they're going to be finance majors, like, real estate, I come out with a real estate degree or whatever degree to get into property management. It's amazing how, the different ways people get into property management. If you're organized and you use common sense and, and you do a good job and all that, you can be a property manager. Asset managers take a different skill level generally, and property managers a lot of times will learn that and get educated and then become asset managers. Because they're going to be dealing in a much higher, you got asset managers are looking at the exchanges, what's the tax rate, what's the benefit of this and that, moving properties from this market to that market. So anyway, long way back around to your original question, 1 to 2% of property.
Thank
And
you.
Ernesto, you should take Rick's, right? A lot of people like Eva Shashank, he was in property management, I think at Colliers, running India. So taking this internationally, all these different groups and plugging in, there is so much you can learn. Great people, especially later on. As Scott said, if you wanted to own your own building, you start syndicating, putting deals together, you better have a property management group that understands the local market and product type, or you better. And that's why, going through your career, this is so important to show up, at what some of these these property management events. You learn a lot. And then at least you have that larger network. And it's not as competitive, it's more collaborative, because a lot of times, and I know it's changing, right? Some property management ads for their services, they do leasing and sales, but there's some owners that likes to keep it separate because of conflicts of interest. We know some people sandbag their property managers and then they try to buy it. So you got to learn all these details, and it's just being in the game. But like you said, reaching out to Scott and other people that are experts and building that community really, really helps. And especially as receivership, during the last cycle, got a ton of buildings from banks. It helped me get through the last cycle because they were just giving me all sorts of assets. But without a property management and doing the broker opinion of value, putting a package and a plan of managing to disposition to get some of this off their balance sheet, I mean, you got to have it all, right? And understand. But if you don't build it within your own group, you got to find the right partners. And that's the one thing we said at a higher level game. You need to build your partners. Everyone needs to reach out, connect. And I would just say like EXPCon or other events, CCIM that just passed, or I think they're just finishing up, SIORs coming up. You just plug into these networks, especially if it's your product type, and some of the ancillary services. Any other questions for Scott? But internationally, Ernesto, this is a big one in property management. There's a lot. I mean, asset management with them, it is huge business.
They were
Well,
sort of
any other
taking it on
questions?
themselves here. We've been shopping around to try to buy some of the smaller management companies, but like they're either doing condos, so condo management, or Airbnb, or logement local, like local, like short-term rentals. There's no apartment buildings. I mean, people are buying unit here, unit there, and pulling it all together. It's not all under one roof. It's all over the place. So we're presently building 67 units on one project and 55 units, and we're doing condos, but we're going to try to sell it as a portfolio and throw in the management. We're going to have to. That's why I was sort of the whole thing. So it's been fun. So syndication, asset management, and now property management. Yay!
Ernesto, reach out to Scott. He'll show you, walk you through it, gives you maybe some sheets to get it. But I would say don't try to reinvent it to be cheap. Save a couple bucks, because the liability, and that's the one thing I need to stress, the liability in property management, especially in different states, because of trust accounts, other conflicts. I mean, unless you're squeaky clean and very airtight, I know Scott, you're almost anal about it, but you almost have to be as property manager because the liability, handling money and trust accounts. We've seen bad things happen with these trust accounts and other things when you don't have good checks and balances. it's a lot of trouble. Sometimes it's worth bringing it down, negotiating a good deal, or referring business back and forth, and they cut you a break of deals they manage or your own deals. But these are some of these tips that you need to learn, everyone, when you're doing this game in this business, because if you don't know, they're just going to give you the retail rack rate. Nelson?
So, getting the business a lot of times requires, referrals and that sort of thing. So I know of a deal, I'm not in property management, I want to get the right guys on the job. How do you compensate people in the field for bringing you business?
Well, if a broker brings a property management account to a management company, a lot of times it's going to be, the standard I'd say is the first month of the management fee, first full month, not the prorated. That's pretty standard. But again, that's the benefit of also having a relationship with the management company, because the second one you bring them, you can probably get a month and a half. And the third one, you could probably start getting 2 months, right? Like I used to give brokers months 1 and 13. Right? Because I mean, as a management company, your margins are thin. You've got to make sure your people are taken care of, so you have good staff. And so I would give them month 1 and 13. And also as a marketing piece for me on the management side is I got to make sure I talk to that broker again. And brokers love to get checks. I don't care if you give a broker a $78 check. They just love to get money, right? And in the old days, we used to print the checks and hand it to them, and that was the best. Now you ACH it. You kind of lose that, where you hold it for a second and make sure they love you.
I still get excited about getting money.
You do, right? Yeah. So management company, generally it's going to be that month, but it's again, that's the reason to have a relationship with 1 or 2 and stick with them, and they should be sticking with you. Even though I had the brokerage company, if a agent or a broker referred property to me, I made sure as much as I could that they got that property back. And I assured them I won't sell it. None of my people will sell that property. I can assure you of that. Whether an owner gets mad at the broker and picks somebody else, I can't do anything about that. But I can at least say that we wouldn't do that because one, it's, you got fiduciary duties, and now we would disclose that to the client too, because again, I don't want any problems, and I want everything to be transparent and everybody to know everything. So, but as far as a referral fee, that's what you could ask. And if they, if you've given them a couple of properties, they don't want to give you 2 months, suggest the 1 and 13 model, because for them, they're going to know that they got a whole 11 months out of that to make profit. And really, they're only going to make about, out of the 11 months, they're going to make about 7. Because the other months you're spending so much staff time and getting the property up and running and getting the systems in place, you got extra staff time put into it. So I wouldn't say it's got the same margin of profit. The other thing I would say that I don't see a lot of brokers do is they refer the property in, but then they're kind of done with it, right? And they sit back until the owner says they want to sell, or the management company maybe is nice enough to tip the broker off, hey, we think so-and-so is going to sell. Well, what I would suggest, and we may do a webinar just on this, but what I would suggest is you stay with that management company. You don't need reports every single month, but if the management company and the client are fine with you getting that financial packet or a portion of it, even every other month, get it. Stay involved with it, because you want to know that the rent increases are happening, because it's going to go to value, right? Like if an owner will sell, if they could just get another $1.5 million out of it, then what you need to do as a broker is work with that management company so you can get that value up. And that's going to be obviously rents, other income, and expenses. And so, no management company is going to want you in their day-to-day micromanaging them. But if you just simply request and get a rent roll, that's going to go a long way. Once you become good at property management and understanding it, you're going to look at lease end dates, and you're going to see all these people are month to month, and they're all, $50 below market rent. Well, raise everybody 25. They're still 25 below market. You get 25 times 100 units or 10 units, and that goes to value, right? And you start getting close to that $1.5 million. Again, you can't nitpick them on the expenses, but you can ask questions about landscaping and hauling and sewer rates, things like that are only going to also make you a better broker. I had the benefit of owning both. But on the management side, if you can get some of those management reports, that's to me what I found clients cared about. Client, how many times a day or a week do they get called from a broker? Do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Well, that's not anything, right? What they want to know, and what I always encourage my brokers to do, and what I did, is I found property management information to give to the brokers. That's what they care about. They want to know that the sewer rates are going up 12% next year. They want to know what the loan rates are that you get from your lender partner, right? They want to know, in California, we have a balcony law. Balconies have got to be tested and certified by end of 25. They want to know about that. Things like that. I found they want to know about property management things more than brokerage things, because they're going to already get, most of the bigger players are already getting. I mean, it's the internet now. It's not like in the old days where they needed you for the info as much. They can get an account somewhere and find out what's sold recently, and it's going to give them the per square foot sale price, and they pull out their big button calculator and there's their price. So they need brokers to help them maximize income, work with their management companies, and what are the expenses about, right? So that's what I found as on the brokerage side, working with managers that help my brokerage a lot, is to have that relationship and to get their information from them and to work with them on that asset. Even if that asset wasn't going to trade for another 3 years, that's all pipelined us, right? I mean, you get a bunch of people lined up next year, the year after, and you get 6 of those done on a cycle, and you've got a good brokerage plan into the future.
Scott, you brought up lots of good points. That's where you can work with property management, especially in your product type. Say you work a deal, get some good information, send it to a client list. Because once you buy the property, they need to manage it, make it profitable, cut expenses, right, to make more value. And then you do the acquisition disposition part of it. But really, a lot of the holding period for syndicators, investors, it's that 3 to 7 year period, right? They talk to their property management until they get so big. A lot of times they just keep everything in house to save some, shave a little here, shave a there, especially if it's your own portfolio. But I would even say this. I know property management hates this, but building your property management until you have scale as a portfolio, and then you move it off if you really like this business. Some people, Scott, you were built for property management and you enjoy it. Some people as brokers, we get antsy. We can't handle it, right? But whatever fits. But there are so many ways to do, and you will work with property management. I think it's just key. And I just know it's not sexy, but it's necessary. So I encourage everyone to reach out to the residential portfolios, commercial, different product types, find that property management group, start collaborating, getting data and information, because they know it better than brokers and anyone else about how to run your property much better. And I'll tell you, most owners of property, they want to know this, right? Besides the comps, but if they're not ready to sell, how much can I increase my rent? How can I cut my expenses, especially around the country right now? Property casualty insurance, crazy. Even if you can get it, and like you said, Scott, underinsured, paid off your property, no insurance, taking a bet, right, that nothing bad happens, saving some premiums. But these are all the games and everything you need to learn and know when you do this. But also, I would always say, can't just be you. It's always best to work as a team and just really scale your business. Scott, any final words for everyone here?
No, I'll stick up for the management industry side and say, be nice to them. They rarely get a happy phone call. Be nice to them. They work very hard. And you'll find a lot of benefits from that, right? I mean, remember when you're going through due diligence and you're selling it, they're losing a property. So, you're thrilled because you're 2 weeks away from closing. They're 2 weeks away from losing an account. So, just keep in mind the difference. Now, I'll tell you this, if you find a good management company that's doing a good job on a property, and that owner, your buyer, for instance, says, oh, well, do you think I should, who should I get as a management company? If you can keep that property with that management company, because they're truly doing a good job. If they're doing a bad job, obviously not. But if they are, you want to talk about making your best friend like forever, that management company will love you. I mean, because they're going to know, oh, this broker we may keep this property if we do a good job, and the broker, will go to the owner and recommend us to keep it. I mean, that is the best of all worlds for a management company. So just remember, during due diligence, you're not on opposing sides, but when you're thrilled that you're walking every unit and they're opening doors and you're kind of standing back with your coffee, they're losing a client. So be nice to them. They should be nice to you, and everybody wins.
Scott, thank you so much. And words of wisdom, I'll tell you that is true. And sometimes if you buy them a coffee or give them some donuts to the team, it does go a long way. And we all know in a market, you want to have those good relationships. And if you have it, they may pass a lead or deal. I've had that happen. Some property management, some people were looking at the property, they got a client, they said, hey, you were nice to me, I'm sending you the lead, right? When they were looking at the property too, and it wasn't represented by you. So be nice. I love that, Scott. But everyone, thanks again for being on Top Agent Nation Commercial Wednesdays. Please join the back pass, VIP back pass, so you can get more information. And there's going to be a lot more classes on this. And Nelson, we'll have you on next time to talk about green and ESG and everything else. So
got a lot of great things to talk about. So yeah, it's a good time.
Thank you, everyone. But Ernesto, reach out to Scott, and everyone have a great Wednesday, and look forward to seeing everyone.
You're saying through this pass, is it for your downline only, or is it?
No. This is open. This is everybody. This is
cool.
Helps everyone get free information. We just want to put good stuff out there, especially with all us commercial folks.
Sign up now. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You as well.